3. The beginning of revolutionary wars. The overthrow of the monarchy in France. The preparation of an intervention against revolutionary France. The revolution in France contributed to the rise of the anti-feudal struggle in other countries, not only in London and Petersburg, Berlin and Vienna, in Warsaw and Budapest, but also across the ocean. Progressive social circles greedily took news from revolutionary France. The Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen and other documents of the revolution were translated and published in many countries of Europe, in the United States and in Latin America. The slogan, freedom, equality, brotherhood, proclaimed by the French Revolution, was seen everywhere as the beginning of a new century, the Age of Freedom. The more obvious became sympathy for the French Revolution and its progressive ideas on the part of the progressive public of all countries. The greater hatred for revolutionary France was revealed by European feudal absolutist states and bourgeois aristocratic England. The main organizer and inspirer of the counter-revolutionary coalition was England. The British ruling circles feared that with the fall of feudalism the international position of France would strengthen, and the radical democratic movement in England itself would strengthen. English diplomacy sought to reconcile the then antagonistic Austria and Prussia and to use their combined forces against France. This effort was sent to Tsarist Russia. In the summer of 1790, at the Reichenbach Conference, with the mediation of England, the main disagreements between Prussia and Austria were resolved. In August 1791, at the castle of Pillnitz, the Austrian emperor and the Prussian king signed a declaration of joint action to assist the French king. Pillnitzkaya declaration meant a conspiracy to intervene against France. The conflict that arose between France and the German princes, whom the revolution deprived of possessions in Alsace, led in early 1792 to a further sharp aggravation of relations between Austria and Prussia with France. The beginning of the war with Austria and Prussia. Louis XVI, his close associates, most of the officers and generals for his part, tried to accelerate the war, believing that France would not stand the external onslaught and that, as soon as the interventionists advanced into the interior of the country, they could suppress the revolution with their help. Realizing this, Robespierre and the Jacobin Club objected to the immediate declaration of war. He demanded a preliminary cleansing of the army commanders from the counter-revolutionaries and warned that otherwise the aristocratic generals would open the way to Paris for the enemy. But the Girondins supported the proposal to declare war. Fearing the further growth of the class struggle, they hoped that the war would distract the attention of the masses from internal problems. Closely associated with the bourgeoisie of large shopping centers, Bordeaux, Marseille and others, the Girondins also hoped that a successful war would lead to the expansion of France's borders, the strengthening of its economic positions, the weakening of its main rival, England. The question of war led to a sharp aggravation of the struggle between the Jacobins, the supporters of Robespierre and the Girondins. April 20, 1792 France declared war on Austria. Soon the Austrian ally Prussia joined the war against France. Robespierre's prediction came true. In the first weeks of the war, the French army, led by aristocrats or generals who did not understand the features of the Revolutionary War, suffered a number of severe defeats. The secret collusion between the king and the aristocrats with foreign interventionists, which we had only guessed before, now became obvious after the treasonous actions of the generals. The Jacobins pointed this out in their speeches and pamphlets and called on the masses to fight both against the external and against the internal counter-revolution. The people saw that it was time to defend the homeland and the revolution, now inseparable from each other, with weapons in their hands. The word, patriot, which spread at this time among the people, acquired a twofold meaning: the defender of the motherland and the revolution. The millions of peasantry understood that the interventionists were bringing with them the restoration of the hated feudal absolutist system. A considerable part of the bourgeoisie and well-to-do peasants have already acquired land property, mainly at the expense of church property, By the end of 1791, church lands were sold for more than 1.5 billion livres. The invasion of invaders and the possibility of restoration of the pre-revolutionary regime created a direct threat to this new property and its owners. In the face of the almost open betrayal of the government and many generals, the weakness and inactivity of the Legislative Assembly, the masses of the people, on their own initiative, defended revolutionary France. In towns and villages, battalions of volunteers were hastily formed. Committees were created to collect donations for their armament. Local democratic clubs and organizations demanded that the Legislative Assembly take emergency measures to defend the fatherland and the revolution. Under the pressure of the popular masses, the Legislative Assembly adopted a decree on July 11, 1792, declaring, "The fatherland is in danger." According to this decree, all men fit for military service were subject to conscription in the army. The popular uprising of August 10, 1792, the overthrow of the monarchy. With each passing day it became more and more obvious that victory over the external counter-revolution was impossible without the defeat of the internal counter-revolution. The people insistently demanded the deposition of the king and severe punishment of the general's traitors. The Commune, city government body of Marseille in late June 1792 adopted a petition demanding the abolition of royal power. A similar requirement was put forward in a number of other departments. In July, in some sections of Paris, the division of citizens into active and passive was cancelled by default. The section of the Mackenzie, in which many workers and artisans lived, adopted a resolution stating that the section does not recognize more Louis XVI as King of the French. During July, armed detachments of volunteers from the provinces, Federates, came to Paris. The Marseille Federates sang the Song of the Rhine Army, written by a young officer, Rouget de Lille. This song, called the Marseillaise, became the fighting anthem of the French people. The Federals established close contact with the Jacobins and created their own organ, the Central Committee. Reflecting the revolutionary determination of the broad masses of the provinces, the Federates submitted petitions to the Legislative Assembly, insisting that the king be deprived of power and convoked by the democratically elected National Convention for the revision of the Constitution. At the same time, when a powerful revolutionary upsurge was building in the country, the manifesto of the Duke of Braunschweig, commander of the Prussian army concentrated near the borders of France, was published. In an appeal to the French population, he frankly stated that the purpose of the campaign was to restore the power of the king in France, and threatened the rebels with merciless reprisals. The manifesto of the Duke of Brunswick, cynically revealing the counter-revolutionary aims of the intervention, aroused great outrage in the country and accelerated the overthrow of the monarchy. The masses of Paris under the leadership of the Jacobins began to openly prepare for an uprising. Two-thirds of the Paris sections joined the decision of the section of the Mackenzie, demanding the deposition of Louis XVI. On the night of August 10, the alarm clock ushered in the new uprising in the capital. The people gathered in sections, formed detachments. The commissars of the sections proclaimed themselves to be the Revolutionary Commune of Paris and led the uprising. Battalions of the National Guard from the working suburbs, as well as units of the Federates, arrived from the departments, moved to the Tuileries Palace, the residence of the king. This palace was a fortified castle. At the approaches to the palace, artillery was concentrated, but the detachment of the Marseille volunteers entered into fraternization with the artillerymen and, under the exclamations, "Long live the nation!" carried them away. The path to the palace was opened. The king and the queen took refuge in the building of the Legislative Assembly. It seemed that the popular uprising had achieved a bloodless victory. But at the moment when the detachments of the insurgents broke into the inner courtyard of the Tuileries Castle, the mercenaries, Swiss and monarchist officers who settled there, opened fire. At first the people left, leaving dozens of dead and wounded, but a few minutes later a fierce battle broke out. Residents of the capital, as well as federal troops, rushed to storm the palace. Some of his defenders were killed, others capitulated. In this bloody battle, the people lost about 500 people killed and wounded. Thus the monarchy that existed in France for about 1,000 years was overthrown. The French Revolution rose to a new level, entered a new period. The development of the revolution along the ascending line was explained by the fact that the broadest masses of the peasantry, workers, and plebeians were drawn into the revolutionary process. The French bourgeois revolution more and more revealed its national character. New agrarian legislation. As a result of the uprising of August 10, 1792, power in the capital actually passed into the hands of the revolutionary Commune of Paris. The Legislative Assembly declared Louis XVI only temporarily detached from power, but at the insistence of the Commune, the king and his family were arrested. A decree was issued on the convocation of the National Convention, in which all men who had reached the age of 21 could participate, without any division of citizens into active and passive. The Legislative Assembly appointed a new government, the Provisional Executive Council, consisting of the Girondins. The only Jacobin in the council was Danton. After the victorious uprising of August 10, which showed how great forces are hidden among the people, it was impossible to delay with consideration of the demands of the peasantry. The Legislative Assembly, which had recently neglected to postpone the consideration of hundreds of peasant petitions, was now busy with the agrarian question with haste, betraying its fear of the menacing force of popular anger. On August 14, the Legislative Assembly passed a decree on the division of communal lands. The confiscated lands of emigrants were allowed to lease small parts of 2 to 4 arpents, approximately from 0.5 to 1 hectare, in perpetual possession for annual rent or to transfer to full ownership with payment in cash. The next day, a resolution was passed to end all prosecutions in cases involving former feudal rights. On August 25, the Legislative Assembly decided to abolish without redemption the feudal rights of those owners who could not legally prove them by appropriate documents. The agrarian legislation of August 1752, which satisfied part of the demands of the peasantry, was a direct result of the overthrow of the monarchy. Victory at Valmy. The immediate consequence of the victorious popular uprising of August 10 was a turning point in the course of military operations. On August 19, the Prussian army crossed the border of France and, developing the offensive, soon penetrated into the interior of the country. August 23, Prussian troops took the fortress Longueval, without a fight, handed over to the enemy commandant Trader. September 2, Verdun fell, the last fortress, covering the approaches to the capital. The interventionists marched on Paris, confident of an easy victory. In these days of the deadly danger looming over revolutionary France, the Jacobins, in opposition to the Girondins, who displayed hesitation, weakness and cowardice, discovered tremendous revolutionary energy. They raised all democratic population of Paris. Men and women, children, the elderly, all sought to contribute to the common cause of fighting the hated enemy. The alarm is buzzing, but this is not a signal of alarm, but a threat to the enemies of the fatherland. To defeat them, we need courage, 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 and France will be saved, Danton said. In Paris, rumors spread about the preparation of a mutiny by prisoners in prisons by counter-revolutionaries. The people and the volunteers leaving for the front broke into the prisons on the evening of September 2. From 2 to 5 September, over 1,000 counter-revolutionaries were executed in prisons. This was a spontaneous act of self-defense of the revolution at the moment of its greatest danger. September 20, 1792, at the village of Valmy, a decisive battle took place. Well-armed troops of the interventionists were opposed by the troops of revolutionary France, a large part of which were untrained and unskilled, ill-armed volunteers. Prussian officers with arrogant self-confidence foreshadowed a quick and decisive victory over the revolutionary rabble. But they triumphed early, with the singing of the Marseillaise, with the exclamations, "Long live the nation!" The French soldiers steadfastly repulsed the enemy's twofold attack and forced him to retreat. The great German poet Goethe, an eyewitness of the battle, has sagely noticed that the Battle of Valmy marked the beginning of a new era in world history. Valmy was the first victory of revolutionary France over the feudal monarchic states of Europe. Soon the French launched an offensive along the entire front, expelled the interventionists from the borders of France and entered the territory of neighboring countries. November 6, 1792 was a major victory over the Austrians at Jemappes, after which the French troops occupied all of Belgium and the Rhineland.